Waking up from the car crash, I could only say yes and no, and I had to tell the truth. My wife pulled a chair to my bedside and took out a small notebook filled with questions. Mason, do you have a secret stash of money? Yes. Is it over 50,000? I closed my eyes. Yes. She turned to the next page, staring intently at me. Mason, tell me, are you cheating on me? My name is Mason Carlos, 32 years old, an ordinary employee at a mid-sized company. 3 days ago, I was hit by a car while crossing the street. My head hit the edge of a flower bed, and I passed out on the spot. When I woke up, my wife, Eve, was leaning over the bed, her eyes red-rimmed, her nose a little red, clutching a tissue. I opened my mouth wanting to say, "Honey, I'm fine." But only 2 words came out of my throat. No. Eve paused. No to what? I tried again. Yes. Eve looked at me, tears still in her eyes, her expression shifting from worry to confusion. The doctor was called in quickly. They took 3 CT scans and 2 MRIs. Finally, the attending physician pushed up his glasses and explained to us, with a very academic expression, the patient's brain sustained an impact, resulting in a rare focal lesion in the language center. Currently, he can only produce 2 syllables, yes and no. The recovery time is uncertain. It could be 3 months, or it could be... He paused. Permanent. Eve's face turned white then. But I was more concerned about something else. I realized I couldn't lie. I discovered this after the doctor left. Eve sat back down by the bed, peeling an orange for me, and casually asked, "Are you in a lot of pain?" I wasn't actually in that much pain anymore, but I instinctively wanted to say yes to gain sympathy. However, my mouth opened, and my throat felt like it was being choked, unable to make any sound. I tried again. No. Eve's hand stopped peeling the orange. Not hurting? Yes. Wait, my mouth is out of my control? She glanced at me with an unreadable expression, then put an orange segment into my mouth. Then why did you make me cry for 3 days? Yes. No. I wanted to say no. I squeezed my mouth shut, but the yes had already popped out. Eve looked at me again, that gaze very subtle. She put down the orange, sat up straight, like a different person. Mason, I have a question for you. Yes. Why did I say yes again? Do you have a secret stash of money? The question felt like a needle pricking my back. I wanted to shake my head, close my mouth, pretend to be unconscious, but my mouth was no longer my own. Yes. Eve's pupils visibly dilated. She slowly pulled out a small notebook from her bag, opened the first page, which was densely filled with questions. When the hell did she prepare this? Is your secret stash over 10,000? Yes. Over 50,000? Yes. Over 100,000? My mouth started to twitch. Yes. Over 500,000? The ward was so quiet you could hear the liquid dripping from the 4-bag in the next bed. My lips moved. My throat felt like a traitor lived inside it. Yes. The pen in Eve's hand dropped to the floor. As she bent down to pick it up, I distinctly heard her take a deep breath, then slowly exhale, like she was doing yoga meditation. Mason. Yes. Do you think it's better to be alive than dead? For the first time, I felt that telling the truth could also be a form of torture. Yes. Then you'd better pray that 500,000 is still there. She closed the notebook, a smile on her face that sent shivers down my spine. Otherwise, I'll help you re-experience a car crash. I lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, with a strong premonition. My disaster had just begun. Sure enough, Eve turned to the second page. Have you secretly looked through my phone? Yes. Do you think the steak I cook isn't tasty? Yes. Was the name you called out in your sleep your ex-girlfriend's? My breath hitched for half a second. No. Eve raised an eyebrow. Whose was it then? I opened my mouth, but this question couldn't be answered with yes or no. I could only produce a muffled airflow sound. She rephrased the question. Was it a game character's name? Yes. Eve rolled her eyes, clearly not believing it. But she couldn't refute it because it really was the name of my game character. I subtly exhaled in relief. This damn ability sucks, but at least it can't answer open-ended questions. So, as long as she doesn't ask precise yes or no questions, I still have a glimmer of hope. Is your secret stash hidden in that false bottom drawer in the study? Yes. Damn it. Is the bank card password your birthday? No. My birthday? No. Your mother's birthday? No. She paused. Is it 6 zeros? No. 6 eights? No. She took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping over my face inch by inch, like a scanner reading data. Is it the date you first asked me out? My throat rolled. Yes. Eve froze for 3 seconds. Then she lowered her head, her hair covering half her face, her voice a little muffled. Your way of hiding money is so old-fashioned. She turned the page and continued asking. But I noticed the tips of her ears were red. Okay, at least I gained a few points back this round. Just as I was sighing in relief, she looked up, her gaze sharp again. Mason, have you ever secretly deleted Snapchat messages with other women?
No.
Really no? Yes. Then have you deleted Snapchat messages with other men? My mouth twitched. Yes. Eve's expression froze. What? I wanted to explain that I deleted messages with Wyatt that were just us sending each other memes because they took up too much memory, but only yes came out of my mouth. She stared into my eyes for a full 10 seconds, then slowly pulled out her phone. I'm calling your mother. There's no way to refute this question. I'm completely done for. My mother didn't come. A more terrifying person did, Eve's mother, Mrs. Kelly. The next morning, the moment the ward door was pushed open, a wave of jasmine perfume rushed in, followed by a pair of sharp eyes. Mrs. Kelly was 58, her hair impeccably styled, walking with a confident stride. As soon as she entered, she first checked my foredrip, then felt my forehead, and then turned to Eve. You look fine, you're not dying. Mom, let me explain. Eve pulled her to the window, whispering for 5 minutes. I lay in bed, watching my mother-in-law's expression change from confusion to shock, from shock to excitement. She quickly walked to my bedside, pulled up a chair, and sat down, hands clasped on her knees, like a seasoned detective in an interrogation room. Mason. Yes. Can you really only tell the truth? Yes. Then tell me, do you secretly look down on me? This question was fatal. I looked at Eve for help, but Eve lowered her head and played on her phone, pretending not to see.
No.
Mrs. Kelly nodded in satisfaction. Then, do you think my cooking is good? My throat felt like it was being squeezed, my vocal cords struggling. My lips trembled twice, then a faint but clear syllable squeezed out through my teeth. No. The temperature in the ward dropped 10 degrees. Eve's phone almost fell to the floor. Mrs. Kelly's smile held for 3 seconds, then slowly vanished inch by inch. Not tasty. Yes. I cooked for 3 hours.
Yes.
You mean, the food I cooked for 3 hours isn't tasty? Yes. I want to sew my mouth shut. She then asked the next question. Mason, have you ever done anything behind my daughter's back that would betray her? No. Really no. Yes. Eve interjected. Mom, I already asked him. That line checks out. Mrs. Kelly gave me a suspicious glance, seemingly unsatisfied with the result. Then she cleared her throat and pulled out her own small notebook. Yes. She had a small notebook too. Even thicker. Mason, I'm going to ask you a few questions about Eve. Eve's smile froze. Mom, I need to keep an eye on my daughter's affairs. Mrs. Kelly turned to the first page. Mason, did Eve tell you her monthly salary is over 10,000? Yes. Was she bragging? Eve stood up. Mom, my throat uncontrollably produced a sound. Yes. The ward erupted. Eve's face turned beet red. Mason, shut up. No, yes. I want to shut up too. Mrs. Kelly pushed up her reading glasses and continued turning pages. Did Eve secretly give the living expenses you gave her to her good-for-nothing brother? Yes. Eve completely froze. Mrs. Kelly's face also turned dark. I knew it. Mrs. Kelly slammed her hand on her thigh. That's spendthrift. Mason, you just wait, I'll go home and sort him out.
Eve's voice changed.
Mom, can you please stop asking? Why shouldn't I ask? It's rare to have someone who tells the truth. Well, you can't stand the questions either. Eve suddenly fought back, turning to me. Mason, does my mom have a secret boyfriend? Mrs. Kelly's pen dropped to the floor. The air in the ward completely froze. I looked at my mother-in-law's already twitching face, then at my wife's face, full of curiosity. The gazes of the two women met on me, like two knives sawing at my face. The traitor in my throat was ready. Yes. Mrs. Kelly's expression deflated like a balloon left out for 3 days. Eve clapped her hands over her mouth. Oh my God.
Mom.
You. Mrs. Kelly pointed at me, her finger trembling, then sharply turned to Eve. Why would you ask that? You were just asking me, weren't you? Eve stood her ground. Mason. Is it Jack, the man from the community dance class?
No.
John, the yoga instructor?
No.
Jimmy, who plays chess at the community center? Yes. Mrs. Kelly grabbed her bag, ready to leave. I'm not staying. This hospital is toxic. Eve grabbed her arm. Mom, don't go. Jimmy is a really nice guy. You shut up. The two women wrestled in the ward for 10 minutes, finally reaching an agreement. They would keep each other's secrets, and neither would use me as a lie detector again. Of course, the shelf life of this agreement was about as long as a hot cup of coffee. Because as they left, I clearly heard Eve whisper in the hallway, "Mom, does Jimmy have a pension?" I lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, seriously contemplating a philosophical question for the first time. When a man can only tell the truth, is he most useful or most dangerous? Before I could figure it out, my phone rang. A message from Wyatt. "Dude, I'm coming to see you this afternoon, and could you do me a favor?" I typed my reply. "What favor?" "Help me tell my wife I'm working late." I stared at the message, falling into a long silence. "Dude, did you forget that I can only tell the truth now? Wyatt and I grew up together. In his words, we had a brotherhood forged through fire. In my words, he'd screw over his best friend without batting an eye. At 2 in the afternoon, he pushed open the ward door, a bag of fruit in hand, grinning from ear to ear. Bro,
Heard you got hit?
does it hurt?"
No.
Wyatt paused. "No to what?"
Not hit. No.
"Then what is it?" I opened my mouth, found I couldn't explain, and just gestured, pointing at my throat, then shaking my head. He pondered for 5 seconds. "You mean, you can't say anything else?" "Yes." "Only yes and no?" "Yes." Wyatt put down the fruit, pulled up a chair to my bedside, his expression shifting from shock to contemplation, from contemplation to excitement. "Then you can only tell the truth." "Yes." "Oh my God." He slapped his thigh and stood up, pacing the ward twice. "Bro, you've unlocked a cheat code. Do you know what you can do with this?" I knew. I very much knew. Then his phone rang. Caller ID. The boss, his wife. Wyatt's face instantly changed. He lowered his voice, looking at me. "Bro, if my wife asks where I am, just say."
He stopped.
Then slowly remembered my new setting. "Never mind, I'll take it outside." He slipped into the hallway, closing the door. But the soundproofing wasn't great. I heard muffled bits and pieces. "Working late. Yes, the boss made me. No, not out drinking." 3 minutes later, he pushed the door open, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Handled it."
No.
Wyatt looked at me. "No to what?" Before he could finish, his phone rang again. This time it wasn't a call, but a voice message. His wife Mary's voice boomed from the phone. "Wyatt, you better explain yourself. Your colleague posted on ins. Your company isn't working overtime this afternoon. Where are you really?" Wyatt's face turned green. He stiffly looked back at me, his gaze as if asking, "How did you know?" How could I know? I just said no. But my uncooperative mouth had just delivered the most accurate, damning judgment at the most precise moment. Wyatt took a deep breath, pressed the voice reply button. "Honey, I'm at the hospital seeing Mason." The phone was snatched away. Mary called him on FaceTime. Wyatt dared not refuse. The moment the video connected, Mary's face filled the entire screen. "Is Mason there? Let me see him." Wyatt shoved the phone in front of me, desperately winking. Mary stared at me. "Mason, did Wyatt just get there?" I glanced at Wyatt's face, which screamed, "Bro, save me." Then my mouth opened.
No.
Wyatt's soul visibly floated out of his body. Mary's voice dropped 3 degrees. "Did he go somewhere else first?"
Yes.
"Did he go play cards?"
No.
Wyatt secretly breathed a sigh of relief. "Did he go to an internet cafe?" "Yes." Wyatt slumped back in his chair. Mary was silent for 3 seconds, then let out a laugh. That kind of laugh dropped the ward temperature to below 0. "Wyatt, you just wait." The video call ended. Wyatt covered his face with his hands, a muffled sentence squeezing through his fingers. "Mason, our 20 years of friendship." "Yes." "You just sold me out like that?"
Yes.
"Were you doing it on purpose?"
No.
His hand slid from his face. He looked at me, his gaze like a puppy abandoned by its owner. "You can't control it either?" "Yes." He sighed, slumping back into the chair. "All right, fine. Anyway, my credit score with my wife is already in the negatives." He stood up to pack his things, and as he reached the door, he looked back at me. "Bro, one last question." "Yes." "Do you think it's embarrassing that I'm so afraid of my wife?" I wanted to say no to comfort him, but my mouth wouldn't allow it. "Yes." Wyatt nodded, his expression calm. "Yeah, I thought so too." Then he gently closed the door. The moment the door closed, I heard a low howl from the hallway, like a wounded beast. I pulled out my phone and sent him a message. "Bro, buy some flowers on your way back. don't go home empty-handed. He replied with one word. Screw you. 10 seconds later, another message came. What kind of flowers? I smiled, then realized a problem. I was being discharged tomorrow. Out of the hospital, I would return to normal social relationships, my company, colleagues, boss. And my mouth would still only tell the truth. I opened the WhatsApp work group and saw Owen's latest message. Mason's in the hospital after an accident. His clients will temporarily be handled by me. Below it, the boss's reply. Thanks for your hard work. And below that, Owen's reply. My pleasure, it's all for the company. I stared at those lines of text, my fingers unconsciously clutching the bedsheet. Owen, you've been eyeing those 3 clients of mine for a long time. I put down my phone and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, back at the office, you're going to have a rough time. On the day of my discharge, Eve stayed glued to me, repeatedly whispering the same thing in my ear. At the company, talk less, say nothing if you can, just shake your head if people ask you anything.
Yes.
Just shake your head, don't open your mouth. Yes. You opened your mouth again. Yes. She took a deep breath, pulled a face mask from her bag, put it on me, then added another layer on top. Double mask, no matter how fast your mouth is, nothing will get out. When I walked into the company wearing a double mask, the receptionist looked at me like I was a hazmat soldier. Owen was the first to come over to care about me. He walked to my cubicle, patted my shoulder, a perfectly calibrated smile on his face. Mason, how's your body? Feeling any better? I nodded, not opening my mouth. Heard you had a head injury? Want to take a few more days off? I'll keep an eye on your clients for now, no rush. His tone was sincere, his expression genuine. But I noticed a nearly imperceptible curve at the corner of his mouth when he said, your clients. I still nodded, pointing to my throat, indicating that I couldn't speak. Owen showed an understanding expression. I get it. Take good care of yourself. He turned and left. I opened my computer and found that my client system access had been downgraded. For my 3 key clients, the past week's contact logs were all under Owen's name. He was already poaching my clients. I wasn't angry, because I knew one thing. Owen wasn't just poaching clients. During last year's annual audit, I'd accidentally seen an expense report where the amount didn't match the actual cost. The signature on the expense report was Owen's. At the time, I didn't say anything because it wasn't my business. But now, it seemed I could make it my business. At 11 in the morning, the department held a meeting. Mr. Williamson, the boss, sat at the other end of the long table, speaking for half an hour about quarterly goals, using a PowerPoint presentation. I wore my mask the entire time, sitting quietly in the corner. Everything went smoothly until Mr. Williamson suddenly called my name. Mason, are you familiar with the situation of your clients? Owen said the contract with Anderson Group was almost finalized last week. Is that right? Everyone's eyes turned to me. Owen sat opposite me, his smile unchanged, but the tip of his pen pressed a small dent into the table. I instinctively wanted to say yes, because saying yes was the easiest. But my mouth disagreed, because that contract was far from finalized. Before I was hospitalized last week, Mr. Anderson of Anderson Group explicitly told me that Owen's proposal was full of flaws, and they were hesitant about whether to switch suppliers. I opened my mouth.
No.
The conference room fell silent. Owen's smile froze for a moment, but he reacted quickly. Mason, you just got discharged. You might not be up to date on the latest developments. Mr. Williamson raised a hand, interrupting him. Mason, do you mean the contract isn't finalized? Yes. Owen's brow furrowed. Mr. Williamson looked at Owen, then at me. Owen, didn't your report last week say we'd secured the letter of intent? Owen forced a smile. Mr. Williamson, the situation is a bit complex. Mason might not be aware of the latest progress. Did you falsify the report? This question wasn't from Mr. Williamson. It was from my colleague, Lena. She sat next to me and had always been at odds with Owen. Everyone's gaze once again focused on my face. My mouth moved again. Yes. The conference room erupted. Owen slammed the table and stood up. Mason, are you out of your mind? Mr. Williamson's face darkened. Owen, sit down. Mr. Williamson, he just suffered a head injury. His words aren't reliable. Mr. Williamson raised his hand. I will check the original email records.
Sit down.
Owen slowly sat back down, the muscles in his face taut like an iron plate. He glanced at me. That look held a murderous intent. After the meeting, he stopped me in the hallway. Mason, what the hell do you mean? I pointed to my throat. Don't play mute with me. You were speaking perfectly fine in there. He lowered his voice, stepping closer. You think you can touch me? My uncle is Cameron, the company's VP. You're just a junior employee. Think you can mess with me? His spit splattered on my mask. I stared into his eyes, silent for 2 seconds. Then I reached out, pulled out my phone, and showed him a message. It was a photo I'd taken with my phone during my hospital stay, that expense report from last year, with the abnormal amount. I'd only taken it casually at the time, never expecting it to be useful today. Owen stared at the phone screen, his face draining of color with each passing second. I curved my lips into a smile at him. He couldn't see it anyway, the mask was covering it. Then I typed a message and sent it to him. Give me back my clients. As for the rest, depends on your performance. He pushed my phone away and walked off. His steps were 3 times faster than when he came. I leaned against the hallway wall, pulling down my mask to catch my breath. Mason, you really are something. Can't speak, but you play your cards pretty well. Back at my cubicle, Lena leaned over and whispered, was everything you said just now true? Yes. Owen really falsified the report? Yes. Did he do anything else? I saw the gossipy glint in her eyes and my mouth twitched. Yes. Lena's eyes lit up. She pulled her chair next to mine. You tell me, I'll ask. I pulled out my phone and typed, not here. Treat me to dinner after work and I'll tell you everything. Deal. Owen, your good times are over. The dinner with Lena was less of a meal and more of a deposition. We sat in a dimly lit corner of a ramen shop. Lena leaned in so close I could smell the green tea on her breath. Mason, focus, she whispered, her eyes gleaming with the predatory light of a career gossip. Is Owen's uncle, VP Cameron, also involved in the expense? Skimming. I felt the familiar tightening in my throat. My brain screamed, don't get involved, but the traitorous muscles in my neck jumped. Yes. Lena gasped, nearly knocking over her miso soup. I knew it. And does the finance department know?
No.
Are you planning to take them down? I paused.
Was I?
I just wanted my clients back and to be left in peace. But as I looked at Lena, I realized that in a world of corporate lies, I had become the only objective truth. I was a nuclear deterrent in a business suit. Yes. Lena spent the rest of the night typing furiously on her phone. By the next morning, the atmosphere at the office had shifted from professional curiosity to palpable dread. People didn't just walk past my desk anymore, they scurried. When I entered the break room, conversations died instantly. I was no longer Mason Carlos, the guy from accounting. I was the Oracle. Owen didn't show up for work that day. Instead, I received a summons to the top
floor.
VP Cameron's office. The office was vast, smelling of expensive leather and cold ambition. Cameron was a silver-haired man who looked like he'd never skipped a day of golf in his
life.
He didn't offer me a seat. Mason, he said, leaning back in his chair. I hear you've developed a condition, a penchant for honesty. Yes. And I hear you've been sharing certain truths with your colleagues regarding my nephew and company finances. Yes. Cameron smiled, but his eyes stayed like chips of ice. Truth is a subjective thing in business, Mason. For instance, is it true that you've been under immense psychological stress? Is it true that your recent head injury has made you prone to delusions and false accusations? I felt the pressure build. He was trying to lead me into a trap.
If I said
yes, it was admitting I was crazy. If I said no, I was challenging the man who could end my career. No, I said, my voice echoing in the large room. Cameron's smile twitched. Are you sure? Perhaps you'd like to reconsider.
If
you sign a retraction, saying your previous statements were the result of post-concussion syndrome, I can ensure you get a very generous recovery bonus. Is your silence for sale, Mason? The silence stretched. My throat burned. I wanted to say no with every fiber of my being, but a terrifying realization hit me. If I truly believed I could be bought for a high enough price, would the truth-telling mechanism force me to say yes? I tested the waters of my own soul. I thought of the $500,000 in my secret stash, money I had painstakingly saved by playing the high-stakes, high-risk options market over 5 years, money intended to buy Eve the flower
shop she always talked about.
I wasn't a man who cared for bribes.
No.
Cameron slammed his fist on the desk. Get out. You're suspended pending an internal investigation. Yes. I turned and walked out, feeling lighter than I had in years.
I didn't need a
mask anymore. The truth was out, and now it was someone else's problem to deal with the fallout. When I got home, the house was filled with the smell of burnt sugar. Eve was in the kitchen, staring at a tray of blackened cookies. She looked exhausted. Mason, she said without turning around. Did you lose your job? Yes. She finally turned, her eyes red. Was it worth it? Telling everyone about Owen? Telling my mom about Jimmy? I walked over and tried to hug her, but she stepped back. I feel like I'm living with a stranger, she whispered. I can't even ask you, how was your day? Because you'll just say no or yes. I can't vent to you, because you'll tell me if I'm being irrational. Mason, do you even love me, or are you just staying because you're forced to say yes when I ask? This was the danger of the truth. It stripped away the social grease, the little white lies and polite omissions that keep a marriage functioning. I grabbed her notebook from the counter and a pen. I couldn't speak, but the doctor never said anything about writing. I love you more than I can say. The truth isn't a curse when it comes to us, I wrote. Eve read it, then looked up at me skeptically. Is that the truth? Or can you lie on paper? I froze. I hadn't thought of that. I picked up the pen and tried to write. I am a billionaire. My hand cramped. The pen skittered across the page, leaving a jagged, illegible
line.
I tried to write, the sky is neon green. My fingers felt like they were being crushed by an invisible vice. I looked at her, my eyes wide. I couldn't lie in writing either. Eve saw my struggle. She took the pen and wrote a question. Is the secret stash of money for another woman? I grabbed the pen.
No.
My hand moved smoothly. Is it for a gambling debt?
No.
Is it for me?
Yes.
She bit her lip. Mason, I need to know. That message you deleted, the one with the man. You said it was Wyatt. Are you having an affair with a man? I almost laughed. I took the pen. It was a meme group for a game. We were making fun of the boss. I deleted it so you wouldn't see how much time I waste on my
phone.
Eve let out a long, shaky breath. She leaned her forehead against my chest. This is exhausting. I feel like I'm interrogating a prisoner of war every time. I want to talk to my husband. Yes, I whispered. Are you going to get better? I went to the notebook. I don't know, but I'm going to use this while I have it. The suspension didn't last long. 2 days later, I received a phone call from the company's board of directors. Apparently, Lena hadn't just gossiped to the office. She had sent an anonymous tip, complete with my Oracle reputation, to the group's external auditors. They wanted me in the boardroom, not as an employee, but as a witness. The room was filled with suits much more expensive than Cameron's. These were the people who owned the company. Cameron and Owen were there too, looking like they were walking toward a guillotine. The chairman, a woman in her 70s with the eyes of a hawk, looked at me. Mr. Carlos, we've heard a great deal about your unique condition. We have the expense reports here. We have an internal audit, but we need a definitive confirmation. Did Vice President Cameron authorize the diversion of funds into his personal offshore account? Cameron stood up. This is absurd. You're going to take the word of a man with a documented brain injury? He can only say 2 words. Sit down, Cameron, the chairman snapped. Mr. Carlos? The room went silent. I looked at Cameron. He was trembling. I looked at Owen, who looked like he was about to vomit. Yes, I said. The chairman nodded. And was this done with the knowledge of the CFO?
No.
Did Owen Smith knowingly falsify the Anderson Group contract to inflate his quarterly performance?
Yes.
For the next hour, they went through a list of names and transactions. I sat there like a divine judge, delivering yes and no like thunderclaps.
It was
the most powerful I had ever felt. I wasn't just Mason Carlos anymore. I was the personification of a company's conscience. By the end of the meeting, security was called to escort Cameron and Owen out of the building. The chairman walked over to me as the room cleared. You've done this company a great service, Mason. Though I imagine your life is going to be quite difficult. From here on out, a man who cannot lie is a man who can have no friends in high places. Yes. Would you like to keep your job? We could use a permanent compliance officer with your talents. I thought about the stress, the targets on my back, the way people looked at me. I thought about the 500,000.
No.
She smiled. I thought as much. Your severance package will be substantial. Let's call it a reward for your honesty. A month passed. I was officially unemployed, but the substantial reward combined with my secret stash meant I never had to work again if I didn't want to. I bought the shop Eve wanted, a beautiful corner space with big windows. We spent our days painting the walls and ordering supplies. But the silence was still there. My throat still felt like it was guarded by a
sentry.
Wyatt came over one afternoon to help move some heavy planters. He hadn't spoken to me much since the internet cafe incident. He was cautious, like he was handling unexploded ordnance. "Hey, Mason," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "You ever miss it? You know, being able to tell a white lie to get out of a boring dinner?"
No.
"Really? You like being the human polygraph?" I paused. I went to the notebook I now carried everywhere. "It's lonely," I wrote. "But I know that every time I tell Eve I love her, she knows it's the absolute truth. There's a peace in that." Wyatt read it and sighed. "Yeah, I guess. Mary makes me take a polygraph every time I come home now anyway, so you're not missing much." That evening, Eve and I sat on the floor of the empty shop, drinking wine out of plastic cups. The sun was setting, casting long, golden shadows across the hardwood floor. "Mason," she asked softly. "Yes." "Are you happy?" I opened my mouth. I expected the usual struggle, the usual mechanical yes. But something felt different. The sentry in my throat felt tired.
Like it
had finished its job. I started. Eve froze. Her cup stopped halfway to her lips. I said. The words were shaky, hoarse, and definitely more than one syllable. Eve's eyes widened. "Mason? Say something else. Anything." I looked at her, at the woman who had stayed with me when I was a broken machine, who had learned to communicate through notebooks and interrogation. "I love the way you look in the morning," I said, my voice gaining strength. "And for the record, your steak really isn't that bad. It's just a little
chewy."
Eve burst into tears, laughing as she threw her arms around me. "You jerk. You're back." "I'm back," I whispered into her hair. But as I held her, I wondered. I tried to think of a lie. I tried to think, I hate this woman. My throat tightened instantly. My vocal cords locked. I couldn't say it. I smiled against her shoulder. The curse hadn't entirely left. I could speak. Now I could use full sentences, but the truth-telling mechanism was still there, a silent guardian of my integrity. I could say anything I wanted as long as it was real. I realized then that the car crash hadn't just broken my language center. It had pruned away the parts of me that were fake.
"Eve,"
I said. "Yes. I think I'm going to be the most honest man in history." "I know," she smiled, wiping her eyes. "And Mason?" "Yes?" "Don't ever mention the steak again." "Yes," I said, and this time, it was the easiest truth I'd ever told. Mason Carlos never returned to the corporate world. Instead, he became a consultant, the kind of man companies hired when they truly wanted to find the rot in their systems. He was known as the Veracity, a man who couldn't be bribed, couldn't be threatened, and most importantly, couldn't lie. He and Eve ran the flower shop together. It was the most successful business in the neighborhood, mostly because when a customer asked, "Will these flowers last a week?" Mason would look them in the eye and give them the absolute, unvarnished truth. And every year on the anniversary of his accident, he would visit the doctor who told him his condition might be permanent. "How are we doing, Mason?" the doctor would ask. "I'm doing well," Mason would reply. "Any lies yet?"
"No."
"Do you regret it?" Mason would look out the window at his wife waiting in the car, at the life they had built on a foundation of absolute transparency. "No," he would say. And the yes/no sentry in his throat would finally, quietly go to sleep.